Today we're going to talk about how in the world does a first-time home buyer afford a house? How do they go about it? In today's video, we're going to talk about what to do to get ready to buy a house, especially if this is your first one. Young home buyers, they don't have to be young necessarily to have it be their first house, but I talk to them all the time about getting ready to buy a house, and there's some nervousness because it's expensive here in San Diego, and how do they afford a house, the payment, etc. What do they do to get ready? So let's talk about that right now. Now, there are some really good points to buying a house now than 5 months ago or in the last year and a half. Even though the interest rates are higher, they were so incredibly low before, but what was happening is houses kept going up in price constantly, and there were bidding wars which would drive the house prices, even in the beginner's range, 100,000 over, 75,000 over. This is really a much better time to buy a house right now than earlier. Even though the interest rates were low, there are some ways to be able to get into your first place. I really like some of Dave Ramsey's videos on how to go about saving for anybody really, but I think for first-time buyers, he's got some great points by getting rid of your debt, number one, even your car payment if you can, and really trimming down your expenses, keeping a budget and looking at what you're spending money on. Maybe you can eat out less, maybe just one time a week instead of 2 or 3 times, and then that right there can be some of your savings towards your house. But he's got some great ideas on how to reduce your debt and get yourself into some good financial shape for buying a house. The idea of downsizing your residence right now in order to save up if you don't have the money, I think is a really good one, but you do need to earmark that money so you don't spend it in other areas. If the goal is to save for a down payment. And also, as I was mentioning about living with family members or friends, you still probably need to pay them rent, but you could save probably a good chunk down. I know people that have saved maybe $80,000 in 2 years that they can put towards a house. That's a big help. Now, regarding a down payment, you can go with as little as 3 or 3.5% down. 3.5% is an FHA loan. I know there are some conventional loans that will do 3%. Now, if you're under 20% down, you're always going to have a PMI insurance. That will add a certain amount on each month to insure because it's under the 20%. VA loans are excellent for military or ex-military. They can go with as little as 0 down. And sellers can even pay some of the closing costs in that case. And right now in today's market, that is happening more, where a seller might help to buy a point down or contribute a little bit more towards the down payment. So that's something to think about with this more flexible environment with negotiating. So if you already have, let's say 3.5% down and closing costs, now you want to think about that. So for like on a house, just as an example, that's $650. If you were in that range, your closing costs might be something like $15,000 or less. So you've got to account for that as well. But if you've got the 3.5% down plus that, you could just go right ahead and dive into the market. I think it's not a bad idea because houses are still going up. They're not going up in every circumstance, but we're still seeing an increase. And instead of waiting and the housing market goes up at all and keep saving money, you might as well just jump in and get into your first house and gain some equity right now. Not everybody agrees with going with the minimal amount down. I know some financial coaches, probably like Dave Ramsey, would recommend putting much more down towards a house. But I think just to get into a house and start the process, I believe it's a good idea to dive in if that's the way you want to go with it. So the next step after you got enough of a down payment and closing cost, go see a lender, maybe 1 or 2 different lenders, and a real estate agent like myself. I always have a couple or one good name, maybe a couple, that I like to recommend just because I know they'll do a good job and they're proven in the market and things like that. So that would be the next step, is to go ahead and get your pre-approval ready and look at and see what your what your payment is going to look like. You're definitely going to want to know that. And you're going to want to focus on, can you afford that payment? Even though the numbers say you can afford it, can you afford that payment, that $3,500 a month or whatever it is payment? That's so important to look at. Now let's say you're really interested in a couple different areas, maybe coastal like Pacific Beach or La Jolla or University City or Claremont even. Claremont is less expensive of the ones I just mentioned, but you really want to live by the coast, but the numbers are just not working out for you to be able to buy something. Maybe you can just afford $750 and the minimum of what you can find is at $850 or so. I highly recommend opening your mind up to looking in other areas that are more expensive, even though it's not your first choice, just to get into the market. There are a lot of good areas in San Diego to take a look at. I'll just give you an example about some of the good areas to consider. I really think that going a little bit more towards East County, you might be able to afford something that's $650 or so, or $700, where on the coast, more the minimal is going to be in the high 800s. And that's just Claremont. I'm not talking about La Jolla and PB, but I'm talking about Claremont if you're buying a detached house. The average there is about 1.1 million. But you can find houses under 900,000. So open your mind up to some other areas and let the realtors show you around and get to know some other areas, because there's lots of nice places. Here are some of the areas that are affordable that I like. I do like La Mesa very much. La Mesa's got a super cute downtown area. People, my daughter lives in La Mesa. She just loves being able to walk downtown. It's a very cute place with lots of little restaurants and shops and things like that. Some hills, a lot of hills. El Cajon, there's a wide variety of pricing in El Cajon. And if you're willing to go out a little farther, even like to Granite Hills and that area, the prices get lower. You get beautiful scenery of El Cajon Mountain and some other mountains. So the scenery is very pretty, sometimes a little bit more land as well. Santee is another spot to think about. You can get a house in nice shape for under 800,000, something that might be 1,200 square feet or so. So there's a lot more areas in that too. Rolando is another nice area that's getting to be more and more popular all the time. It's not far from SDSU and La Mesa. It's almost part of La Mesa. El Cerrito is another great area. It's kind of up and coming, I think. It's not far from Talmadge. Talmadge is great. Now Talmadge is usually a little bit higher, but once in a while you can find a house that's right around 800,000 or so. So that's just a few ideas. Another idea is to look at getting a condo, maybe a 1 or 2 bedroom condo. And you can definitely find condos in a lot of different areas for around 600. I think Mission Valley is a great place to look. You can find something under 700,000 that's a condominium with 2 bedrooms, and you're right in the middle of all the activities. You're near the malls, you're 10 minutes from the beach. A lot of good things that are close by. Going downtown, that's close by too. Downtown is another great area. Some other areas that are less expensive might be Otay Mesa. That's 92154. It's very close to Pacific Beach, and you can find some well-priced houses there that are in the low 700s, and they've been remodeled. Going north, Oceanside is still lower. It's going up in price, getting more popular. Beachfront, I don't mean you could find a beachfront for that price of 700 or so, but not too far away from the beach anyway. Also Escondido, that's got some better pricing as well. That's just a few different ideas. Now let's say that you bought the house and you knew what the payment would be. Now you're thinking, oh, how am I going to get used to this payment? I've been used to $2,500 or $2,200 a month. Now it's going to be $3,800 a month. Well, here's something that I might suggest, and while you're getting used to that payment, besides watching your budget on what you're spending money on and trimming back, consider something called house hacking. It's simply renting a room out to somebody. You know, it may not be for half the price of the house, but for a room with a bathroom, maybe it's $1,500 a month, maybe $1,800 a month, something like that. That's a big help. Another thing you could consider doing to lower your cost is, let's say you've got a 3-bedroom house or even a 1-bedroom. Take one of the bedrooms and make a junior suite out of it where, let's say there's a bathroom attached to it. You put a little tiny kitchenette into it and you close it off and you rent it out. Rent the room out so that it's like a little mini apartment. So that's kind of like the house hacking idea, but it's just a little bit more complete with it being closed off. That could be a big help in supplementing your income while you're getting used to that new payment. Another thing to also take a look at is if it's possible to find a house in your price range with an accessory dwelling unit. I always think that's a great idea. You can rent that thing out and you can get more than you might even expect. And that's just a nice supplemental income. You can also, if you don't want to do it full time, you can consider Airbnb-ing the accessory dwelling unit if you're able to find one. I hope some of these ideas help out a little bit, just to know, so that you know how to just prep and get ready to buy a house, and then also how it can possibly be affordable in this expensive market. Just a few different ideas. If you want to talk more about it, give me a call. I'd love to chat. Also, watch some of my other videos about the different areas that are in San Diego, and I've got a video on some affordable areas in the area.